my name is Glenn Dyer, and you were watching a Dyer-Situation. Today I'm seeing... I'm seeing God's Not Dead 2. I asked for this. You know, I just watch the Miracles from Heaven review. I asked for this to happen. You know, I was so frustrated with that movie for not giving me any material to harp on about, and like the fact that it was just incredibly respectful, but also just super sappy, and makes me sick. And, you know, nothing offensive or moronic for me to harp on about. So now I get this. A sequel to one of the most hateful and awful Christian movies of all time. At least from what I've seen. Yeah, I saw the first God's Not Dead to prepare for this, and it's terrible. Oh man, for many reasons. But like, I think the worst part for me is that like the marketing for the first God's Not Dead, and like the tagline and everything else, the way it's trying to present itself, it's like a debate. If you don't know, basically the movie is that really stupid Einstein copy pasta that went around a few years ago. You know, the one where a professor and a student are arguing over the existence of God or whatever. And you know, the professor is giving his reasons, and the kid provides counter reasons for why he does exist. And then at the end it says, and that student was Albert Einstein! And it always says it in capital letters, so it's something kind of humorous. But this is that was basically the movie version of that, although much, much worse. Essentially, like a straw man movie. If you don't know what that means, it means like basically where there's a character whose sole purpose is for you to vent all of your hatred onto for a certain topic. And to blame for all of the problems in one thing, and yeah, usually of like a real world subject. So, like what would be a good example? So imagine if you had a movie about why bananas are bad or something. And basically a straw man character, at least from what I understand, would be someone who engorges himself on nothing but bananas, is incredibly disgusting, and force-feeds bananas to everyone he meets, so that you will want him dead and simultaneously will hate bananas. I think that's the idea. It comes from like sports terms, I think, where they'll burn a straw man of the opposing team's coach or something. I don't know, it's not a very good thing to do, usually. But this, even worse. I mean, in this movie, the professor, I'm hoping this isn't a spoiler, you really shouldn't watch the movie, but in First God's Not Dead, like, the professor... Let me get this out of the way. He's teaching a philosophy course, and part of the curriculum, this very first day, you have to renounce all religion, which is an absurd idea. No way he'd get away with something like that, for one thing. For another, he is an atheist because he's had a traumatic childhood, which has turned him into a complete asshole towards his wife, who is a devout Christian. Seems odd to me, like completely out of character, but you know, and he's just a complete dick. And then at the end of the movie he gets hit by a car and dies horribly. And there's another character who's like a liberal journalist, introduced to us by interviewing someone from Duck Dynasty, and like, the most head-poundingly stupid thing I've ever seen. And then she gets cancer. Like, this movie is pretty much just saying, like, you don't believe in God? You're gonna fucking die. That's what it was saying. It's so terrible. I mean, like in Miracles from Heaven, they had like a character who was, I don't know, agnostic or something, and at the end of the movie, he just willingly converts. And isn't that like stronger? Like, instead in this movie, like, where people who are dead or dying or, like, then convert over, like, it makes it even worse, because the professor, he said at one point in the movie that religion is like a disease, it preys on the weak, and the sick, and the dying, right? And then, in the movie, like, he gets hit by a car. He's on his way to redeem himself, by the way, like he's hearing some sort of massive Christian rock concert, which, no. So he's on his way to go to it, at least that's what it was suggesting. And then he gets hit by a car on the way, and this priest who happens to come by, who happens to be there, immediately starts trying to convert him on his deathbed, which is so awful. It's such a mean-spirited and terrible thing to do to someone. It's kind of unforgivable. But yeah, and then he, with his last dying breath, he accepts Jesus into his life or something. But wouldn't it just be so much more powerful if he converted willingly, without, like, fear of immediate death upon him and stuff, you know? Wouldn't that be much more powerful than just, like, beating him down physically to, like, to the point where he'd say anything to try and help himself? It's bargaining. It's not even faith. Like, I'm sure many people will agree with me on that. Like, that's not even... that's terrible. And not to mention, even removing that stuff, it's still a terrible movie. It's riddled with a whole bunch of really kind of random subplots that have nothing to do with anything. It's as if this movie is honestly afraid of its own message. And, so it just keeps trying to distract you with a whole bunch of other things, like these two priests who can't start their car to go to Disneyland. Like, that was the thing. They dedicated, like, 5 different scenes to that. This one Muslim girl who spends her free time listening to Christian preachings. Like, she's a closet Christian, and she gets in trouble for it. This is so terrible. And yeah, the debate itself thing is awful. Like, oh god, how do I even describe it? Like, basically, it's our protagonist is this one kid who decides to stand up to the professor for what he believes in and engages him in a quote-unquote debate. But, god, you know what, if you actually want to watch a real debate, like, with actual people and thoughts and reasoning, and not just one person, not just one protagonist standing up for what he believes in, and one incredibly evil person with seemingly all the advantages, who's using bullying tactics and, like, cornering him by the lockers to say, "Yo, kid, you better step off my turf." Like, that was an actual scene that happened. It was terrible. Instead of something like that, like, how about watching actual theology debate here? I mean, right, this one's more creationism versus evolution, but, like, there's a huge debate between, like, Bill Nye and Ken Ham, and, like, that is That's over 2 hours long, and it is way more interesting and way more fun to watch than God's Not Dead. And it involves actual people in an actual debate using logic and reasoning to decide to try to come to a conclusion for the audience. Where, yeah, this movie is mostly just it's mostly just dump all of your hate onto people who disagree with you. That's the message for this movie. It is an incredibly hateful and cynical and awful movie in every way. So, yeah, I've just blabbed on for like 10 minutes or so, or how long have I blabbed on for? Yeah, a little over 10 minutes, and I haven't even gotten to what this movie's about. Alright, so yeah, I'm seeing the sequel to that, because apparently the first movie didn't definitively prove that God's not dead, so they have to do a second one. So that first movie was entirely pointless, is what I'm getting from that. So anyway, God's Not Dead 2, from what I can tell, it's basically gonna be something about teaching evolution in our schools, and some teacher doesn't like it or something. The poster that I've seen for this, like, God, it makes it look like it might be even worse. This looks like it's gonna take the same kind of idea, but expand it into a larger organism. Like I think the synopsis on IMDb is something like, when a teacher is asked about God in class, her well-reasoned response lands her into controversy. So what I'm guessing is that the liberal media and the government are going to be working against her, and she's going to be thrown into this thing that she never even wanted, but she's going to stand up for what she believes in, and almost certainly everyone who disagrees with the creator of the movie is going to die. And considering, like, the poster is showing, like, a huge crowd of people, and one side seems pro-God and the other side seems anti-that, I'm guessing, like, half of the population of the world is going to die in that, because that's just how this movie likes to do it. At least the first one. I don't know, maybe Superman and Zod will be fighting and just destroy all of them. That's... I wouldn't be too surprised. So yeah, I'm expecting this is just going to be incredibly hateful, despicable, and hell, an even worse movie than the first, so... Yeah. Let's see it. Let's see how it is. And another thing I forgot to mention, when, after the professor guy died, one of the priests said, "It is truly a day to celebrate." Which is one of the most awful things I've ever heard a human being say in that particular context. So, yeah. But anyway, before I get to the movie, I'd like to point out that I don't watch trailers, of course, but I was sitting outside the theater waiting for something, and I happened to hear something that was just catching my ear. You know, how do I put it? Honestly, the idea of it is kind of hilarious to me. This is for a movie called Hillary's America, which is, from what I can tell, some sort of exploitation film about how the Democratic Party is going to kill us all. And I don't know if I'll ever see that. That sounds like something that's going to be released in only a few theaters, but boy, I'm gonna have to keep an eye open. I'm not their biggest fan either, but some of the stuff being said in that trailer is just it's just silly. So, anyway, let's get to the movie. I have to say, it is not as bad as the first one. For one thing, nobody dies. That has already put it a few steps ahead of the first one. In fact, the lady who got cancer in the last movie is cured of her cancer in this movie. Which I admit kind of made me facepalm, but then there was like some sort of weird subplot where she was having a crisis of faith, but that never really got resolved. That's the thing, this one also had a few random subplots, but there was less of them, and none of them went anywhere. Like, for instance, in the last movie there was this Chinese kid who was having, who was finding Jesus, right? And at the end of the movie, he finds Jesus. And, you know, that's his arc. And in this movie, he has questions. And that's it. Like, we don't see really an end to that particular plot. There's a I think there's another subplot with the priests that also goes nowhere and doesn't lead to anything. There's one that really stood out to me. Oh yeah, like, yeah, that's the thing. Like, they focused a lot more on the main plot in this one. It was like they were trying to make up for the mistakes of the last one. And I'd have to point out that, yes, they do have a straw man character in this. This is some sort of evil lawyer who is unrelentingly evil, and that is probably one of the worst parts of the movie. However, he does not die. I can't believe I have to say something like that, but no, at the end of the movie, he is perfectly fine. In fact, the lawyer defending our protagonist, you know, just this teacher, he is an atheist, and they tell us this. And at no point in the movie is he converted over, or does he get an illness or something, or hell, is he even portrayed in a bad light? He is honestly probably the most likable character in this movie, and he has his own arc, but the arc is that he becomes a more professional lawyer, and that is it. However, the movie still sucks. Why? Well, never before have I been in a theater and averted my eyes from the screen in complete embarrassment for what's happening on there. Like, I think, honestly, like 60% of the movie I don't think I actually saw because I was going like this or like that or staring at the ceiling or something. Like, oh god, I can't stand this. Yeah, most of this is set in a courtroom. Just so you know, I was exaggerating when I said it was about evolution. It's not even brought up in this movie. This is the plot of this movie is that lady's talking about Martin Luther King and his stuff, and Gandhi, I should point out, talking about Gandhi and Martin Luther King. But they focus mostly on Martin Luther King because he was a minister and Gandhi was a Hindu. They probably don't want to talk about that, but and talking about his teachings, and some kid was like, "Hey, isn't that similar to Jesus?" And she said, "Yes," and that gets her in trouble. And that's the whole thing that happens in the movie. It's just, yeah. So, pretty much the main problem here is just like the dialogue and the script are just so tedious and so terrible. nobody in the world talks like the way these people do, and nobody in the world acts like these people do. Like the lawyer who was against them, the evil lawyer, like literally he is pure evil in the film, and it's embarrassing, honestly. It's hard to talk about without showing you, but like literally he has an agenda against all established religion for some reason, and yeah. And this movie's, yeah, God. So, I'm not going to go into the theological aspects of this stuff, mostly because this is a review channel, and I'm not going to turn this into something about religion or politics or anything like that. So instead, I'll point out some little things, like during the court trial, some of the local Christians are having a protest in which they sit there quietly with signs, and a group of people on the other side are yelling at them 24/7, which is an hilarious image to me, and especially since most of the people yelling looked exactly like the demographic you'd expect to see at a Trump rally, which is funny because you'd think they'd be yelling for the other side. And of course, when you see protests and counter-protests, it's not just one side continuously shouting at the other one, and only that one shouting. Like, it's usually pretty back and forth for anything. But of course, no. If you're a good guy, you are the goodest of guys in this movie. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. Terrible dialogue. Less terrible message than the last film. This one's mostly just a thing about shut the hell up. Just a little better than if you aren't a Christian you'll fucking die, like the first movie was saying. So yeah, whatever. Not as bad. Still not very good, just not as bad. Yeah, there was only really one line in there that kind of got me, and it was just like, people seem to forget that our most important right is the right to know Jesus. I don't know. I was thinking like, yeah, I would put life, the right to live, ahead of that. I mean, I know it's very important, but like, I mean, like one of our country's like main slogan, you know, is like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Like, not to know Jesus. Just saying, it's not. You know, there are things. I guess you could argue like that if you have spiritual faith, you don't even need to live because you'll live forever or something. I don't know. I'm going on about this too much. Yeah, movie sucks, but sucks less than the other one. So, yeah, if you were going to watch either of the movies, watch this one, but don't watch this one. Yeah. And until next time, I'm Glenn Dyer, and you have been watching A Dyer-Situation.